Well, it depends what they want to do for it. If those lots of little small files are not changing in content, then it's an appropriate medium for archiving. If they're changing frequently in content, it's transactional at all, then no, LTFS is not the correct technology to place them on. Some of the other places we're seeing it is in seismic. We are seeing, of course, a lot in media and entertainment. That's where it started. There's interest out of healthcare. But I'll go back to LTFS Library Edition. When we first put that out, we were looking at where it was selling, and it was selling in, we thought it would be a technology mostly absorbed by media and entertainment in the first and second worlds, frankly. We were surprised to see a lot of third world nations, or companies in third world nations, buying LTFS LE. And in calling them and tracking down why, we found things like a Eastern European government funding kind of a Google Street View creation, and they would hire business partners to go out and take footage of the city. The business partners would then mail the LTFS tape cartridge to the central repository. We had banks in Nigeria doing this. Places we wouldn't expect, and it serves as the portability, serves as a poor man's WAN in many ways.
For the small file part, an example that we've had some interest in is like call center file, call logging.
Yep.
That's a bunch of little bitty files that they want to keep forever for a backup, or liability sort of review the calls. That's an example that we've seen some interest in, a use case for small file long-term archive.
This would be a great candidate for GPFS and LTFS EE because you have this volume of data and you have a lot of little files. GPFS excels at storing that. What we run into when you have lots of little files, and Ed, you can probably talk about this more than I can, but you need to increase the number of servers to reach a certain throughput, as opposed to when you have fewer, longer files.
Right.
But we can handle it either way.
Yeah, I think if you look at kind of storage hierarchy histories, the thing that, like you said, when we started, it was a primary store, and you chose where to put it. And
right.
It wasn't considered a auxiliary store.
Right.
It evolved into a purely backup media that was controlled by a proprietary interface, and anytime you needed to move bytes from here to there, you had to go through this proprietary app. Essentially what happened over time is our storage systems got defined by the technology. You had a disk store that got to things through files or blocks or objects. You had a flash, which used to be byte into silicon, but SSDs have become making that file system access. And tape was another path to storage. And what LTFS to IBM is really, in a broader sense, making storage agnostic, technology agnostic storage. So the storage comes together again, like you said in the past, where it's just a placement of data where it best is suited, and you don't have to make a bet up front how much you need of tape or how much you need of disk, and if you're wrong you have to change your architect, or if you're wrong you have to change you fall out of love with one of your ISVs, you have to redo everything underneath it. Our whole goal has been make storage so that the application stack doesn't have to change when you make decisions underneath there of more disk, more tape, different vendor disk, different vendor tape. It shouldn't be that the storage is so tightly tied into the application stack. And that's really what we're trying to do with LTFS.
I think as an industry, the word archive is so heavily overloaded. It has so many different definitions because the fact is, depending on your industry segment and your specific application, what is an archive is very different. And some of the things that we call archives, and for example, media and entertainment, that's your production data.
Sure is.
In other cases, it is a deep archive.
Your point on the perception or the terminology.
Yeah.
I think everybody always relates to something they can understand, and they try to tie the new thing to it, right? My favorite, like I said, when we started LTFS, our vision was really this technology agnostic storage layer, and the favorite frustration I had is when people described it as a 1.5 terabyte thumb drive when we first came out, right? Yes, that's technically true. You can do something like that, and that's the way a lot of people, like in the M&E industry, first thought of it as a replacement to pro videotape, things like that. They're a media-based concept. So that kind of tag got put on the LTFS as it was a thumb drive removable media thing, where in my mind it was always more of a technology software layer to unify the technology layers. Same thing's happening now with archive. It's being equated with archive because that's kind of the immediate use that people see a true value that they could go capture right now. I have an archive problem. I have all this stuff. I need to put it somewhere. Oh, I can do it on LTFS. LTFS is an archive solution. That's kind of the logic. But we haven't done anything that's really prevented LTFS EE to being exactly the solution you described, where the only difference between LTFS EE as an archive and LTFS EE as we'll say an integrated part of an active storage tier is the policy you place on what goes into it. If it's an archive, you have a policy that says everything that lands here, move to tape immediately. Your tape becomes essentially a cache in a landing zone. And there's value there because you can get write access at disk speeds, and then it moves to tape. But the same exact system, same exact software layer that we released, you can put more disk with it, set a policy that says don't move anything that's shorter than a year unless it's bigger than X, and that becomes kind of an operational active store where you're placing data in an operational store in different places, not just an archive system.
There's lots of other active stores you can use LTFS Enterprise Edition for. We don't have to use this rule I named that it's for moving data a year old or a year older. For example, in big data or analytics, you can have extremely large storage pools that need to be shifted and kept for a long time and are going to be used some of the time, can be shifted onto the disk cache. You can beat the heck out of them with your analytics tools. Then you ship them back along with the new results to the tape pool for long-term retention. Now, is that archiving? Not quite in many people's definitions.